First topic for today is looking at the compulsory voting bill, which has been proposed by the National Assembly, to make voting compulsory for adult citizens of Nigeria. Yeah. So, what do you have to say concerning that particular bill?
Thank you very much. The National Assembly is currently planning to come up with a law. And the purpose of that law is to make it compulsory for every adult Nigerian to vote. And then the question is that law the solution to voter apathy that is palpable in this country at this time? I think that to solve a problem, you don't go after the symptoms. You do a proper diagnosis to know what are the root causes of the problems. And then and only then will you be in a better position to profile solutions. It appears they are looking at symptoms and trying to address symptoms without addressing the root causes of voter apathy. I believe that the issue of voter apathy in Nigeria is one that has so many contributory factors. One of them is lack of confidence in the electoral system. We recall that during the period that June 12, 1993 election was conducted, a lot of Nigerians of voting age didn't need any law to compel them to go to the polls to vote for the candidate of their choice. People trooped out in large numbers and they voted. Unfortunately, that election, adjudged as the best so far in the history of this nation, was aborted. It was annulled for selfish reasons. And thereafter, there have been attempts at getting it right at the polling booths. But Nigerians have not yet arrived. One of the major drawbacks to an election, apart from the issue of lack of confidence in the machinery that conducts election, which is INEC, people don't believe that the election will count, that their votes will count. People also don't believe that the so-called machines, the deployment of technology, has made any meaningful difference in the way elections are being conducted in this country. Because Nigerians keep the sigh of relief when they say that technology has been deployed and elections will be free and fair. We still witness incidences of ballot box snatching, vote buying, and all sorts of corruption and tendencies that make the average Nigerian to have a rethink. Some even appear to endanger their lives in the process of trying to vote. In some cases, that there are allegations of voting materials arriving late because some individuals or groups believe that the people that are in that area are not people to vote for their party. There are so many things, so many allegations. And what I believe is the way to go is, first, what we need to do in Nigeria today is to unbundle INEC. INEC as a body is saddled with so many responsibilities. They are involved in political party registration. They are involved in elections, then election violence, post-election trials of criminals that committed a crime during the election and so on. I believe the starting point is to unbundle INEC. Let INEC be unbundled. Let's have a group, you call it an institution, that will be solely responsible for the issue of political party registration or disregistration and all that has to do with party formation in this country. Secondly, let there be a body from INEC that will be responsible for election, voting and voting simplicity. And then a different body that will be involved in the issue of electoral frauds, malpractices, and so on. And then let each body be properly trained and necessary equipment and materials supplied to them to ensure that these works are done and done properly. The second thing is, after embodying INEC, is to do proper sensitization of Nigerians, that the new body that is coming in will guarantee free, fair and transparent elections. Because what most Nigerians say these days is that, will their votes count? What do they stand to gain by coming out, standing under the sun for hours only for, elections to be marred by irregularities? Even the last election that was conducted in Nigeria, the foreign observers that came, they had their report, which report was not encouraging. Their report was reflected that there was so much irregularities and corruptions and so on, vote buying and all that. I can assure you that if Nigerians are assured that the election that will be conducted will be free and fair, then the issue of voter apathy will be nipped to the bud. In America, people don't need to be compelled to go and vote. They see it as their civic duty, their civic responsibility, and the exercise of their right. And they do that. And of course, people that Americans that are not living in America, those living outside America, the disabled, they made provision in their laws for everybody to be allowed to vote. Even Nigerians that are living outside the shores in diaspora, they have been clamoring and clamoring for the right to exercise their votes. That has not yet been fully implemented.
All right.
Now,
all right, let's get the opinion of our Deji on this issue.
Yes, I want to say that the right to vote is a personal thing to a person. And I don't think that the National Assembly is right in trying to compel it or criminalize the exercise of that right. It's a discretion. I think what they should be concerned about is the duty that they have to ensure that that right is properly exercised and the opportunity is there for those people to exercise those rights. Of course, you know that for every right to be exercised, there has to be a corresponding duty on the part of the other, the government. So I think we should be, instead of concentrating on compelling and criminalizing whether people vote or not, what the government should be interested in doing is to ensure that their duty and responsibility to the people to create the environment, the enabling environment for people to vote, is put in place. That is their duty, and that's what they should concentrate on. You cannot criminalize the fact that I don't want to exercise my vote. Over the years, Nigerians have voted in several elections for people, different people, to occupy political office. What has been the benefit to Nigerians? Even for those who have exercised vote, have the vote counted? The last election, we saw what happened in the last election. And I am always of this view that the present National Assembly is too selfish, self-serving in most of what they are doing. And this is one of those kind of self-serving laws that they are passing for their own benefit and their benefit alone. Because election only benefit those politicians who get into office. It's like creating a job for politicians. So if I say I don't want to give you a job, I should have my responsibility to say I'm not voting for any one of you. That there should be no law that says I must be forced to go and vote for a particular candidate or any candidate at all that I don't want to vote for. So I think it's a violation of the right of persons to to criminalize it or to impose certain impediments or certain restriction on people for not voting. So it's not something that we should be encouraged or that the people should accept. It's something that is going to violate the rights of persons. Having said that, my good brother has also talked about some of the teething problems that we have always had in elections. Why don't you address those problems? The problem of pure logistics, pure management of the election process, problems of technical glitch. Up till now, they have not been able to define the technical glitch that led to the falsification of results or the non-collection of the electronic result in the last election. INEC had not even apologized up to today for that glitch. So why should you now compare people compulsorily that they must vote? Can they even manage? If Nigerians come out to vote, does INEC have the logistics to even manage it? In the last election, over 90 million people registered for that election, and the total vote cast was just barely about 20 million.
20 million.
Just about 20 million. What is the fraction of 20 million to? If all those 90 million people come out to vote, can INEC manage the logistics? So let's be practical about this thing. It's not just enough to say you are making a law that people must vote, must be compelled to vote. Do you have the logistics? Do you have the personnel? Do you have the fund to even take care of that electoral process? So I think these are some of the issues we should look at. They should concentrate more on their own responsibility and duty to ensure that enabling environment is created, the materials are available, and then there is an expansion of the logistic base. In the US that my good brother talked about, in US elections, you can vote even 2 weeks before the election. There are online facilities for people to cast their votes. They don't have to wait until the day of election to cast their votes. And you cannot do multiple voting, because the moment you vote twice, because of the forensics that are attached to the voting system and all the technical issues related, it will pick out those votes once it is double voting because of the biometrics that are attached to those elections. Why can't we have such process that will allow for people to vote at the right time and in the right place? We don't have that in place now. INEC is not even manned, is not even equipped to conduct election that will compel all Nigerians to vote. And Nigerians are not even happy, just like my good brother said. Nigerians are not happy with the electoral system or with the electoral process.
All right. Before we how would this bill, reconcile with the right to political apathy and or dissent? Of course, I think the voters should have, or Nigerians should have, a right to political apathy. Say, I'm not going to vote.
Yes. When it comes to the issue of rights, the law is clear that the right that you have, you cannot be compelled to enjoy or exercise that right. It's your right. You can decide not to enjoy it. You can equally decide to enjoy it or exercise it. What the bill tries to do is to compel people to exercise or enjoy a right which is their own personal right.
So is that constitutional?
It is unconstitutional, it is illegal, it is undemocratic, because democracy has to do with rule of law and freedom. If you want to vote, you are at liberty to vote. If you don't want to vote, then you are not compelled. But in Nigeria, we counsel, we encourage people to participate in the voting process, because it is our civic duties as Nigerians to vote. And what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, what is important is to make people to have confidence in the system, because Nigerians are no longer having confidence in the system. And of course, we know that after elections, most people will hear stories about how people gather in a particular place and open ballot boxes, stop them with votes and all that and all that. All these things, they are not good for our democracy. What we need is a system just like what obtains in the United States of America, where people cast their votes And from the comfort of their homes, they can monitor the voting, the result, and everything. And nobody will manipulate any figure. Even in Nigeria, Nigerian Bar Association conducted election. I traveled out of Lagos, and I was able to vote outside Lagos. And everything went on very well. That can be replicated at the national level if our leaders are ready to do so. And when will they be ready to do so? When they have decided to allow Nigerians to decide who will be their leaders. Not leaders imposed through systems that are questionable. You have told us that you have brought in technology that will ensure that people's vote count. And yet, at the end of the day, what we are witnessing is something different from the hopes that were raised. So, of course, no law can compel anybody to exercise his rights. But we're saying, in effect, that number one, the government and the institutions associated with the electoral process must do the right thing. And what is the right thing? To put those structures in place that will guarantee free, fair, and transparent elections. That is the thing that needed to be, not by bringing out a law that everybody must go and vote when the people do not have confidence in the system. So
let me also add this to what my friend is saying. Is it not ludicrous and ridiculous? Now, what is the sanction you are going to impose on anybody who does not vote? What if the election, that particular election on that day, did not hold in that center? Not by reason of the fact that people don't want to vote, or by reason of some logistical problems. Now, how many Nigerians are you going to lock up in prison?
Yeah, because
on account that they did not vote in the last election?
We had up to 90 million.
Yes, 90 million people who registered.
And about 70 million failed to.
Yeah, so they are going to
put them
in prison. Which prison are you going to put them? Which prison are you going to put 70 million Nigerians? Because they
for refusing to exercise their rights. If it's their right, then it's left for them to decide what to do with their rights.
Exactly.
So can't compel them to exercise their rights.
But that brings us to the question: do you think that this proposal is a distraction, from the deeper electoral reform needed in INEC or the voting system? Do you think it's a distraction?
Yes, I think it's a diversion. It's a diversion of, because both INEC and the government have shown gross incompetence in the handling of election. There have been election in the past. There have been election. There have been various panels that have suggested electoral reforms. We had the waste panel. Up to today, successive government had refused to allow some of the findings and recommendations of those panels to work out, because it pays politicians to manipulate the electoral system. Politicians naturally don't like a free and fair election. Even those who call for free and fair election, every politician have in place a plan to rig the election, and that's why it pays them to talk about compelling people rather than procuring a faultless and a flawless electoral process. They are not interested in a flawless or an electoral process that will truly reflect the minds of the people, because they know if the vote of Nigerians count, some of those who are in government today, who are in the Senate, they will not be there. Some of them will not be governors. Some of them will not be president. If the vote of Nigerians do count. So, and I think that that's where the problem is. It's not, they are trying to shift the issue by making the people look and see that is they are the problem. The fact that people do not vote or there is apathy is not the problem of our electoral system, because even when people don't vote, they still cannot manage the volume of the voting, the electoral process flawlessly. Okay, 20 million people are voting. You can't handle 20 million. What if you are not asking that everybody in Nigeria, 280 million people, should be compulsory, they should be made to vote? How are you going to handle it? What manpower do you have? How much manpower, how much training have you given to those people for logistic purpose? How much materials are you going to put together? How are you going to distribute those materials if 90 million people actually come out to vote? And I think that's the issue. The point still remains, as far as we are concerned, as far as some of us are of the opinion, government should sit down and carry out the electoral reform. The West panel is there. Let them look at it. Let them see how they can implement it, so that we can have a flawless electoral process rather than this compulsion and imposing of sanction on people.
All right. But
Yes.
so some persons will say that yet the legislators, the National Assembly, they recognize the issue that there is voters' apathy.
Yes.
And of course, we understand that the bedrock of every democracy is participation of the people.
Yes.
And people participate through election.
Yes.
So where we have less than 20% of the total eligible voters voting to elect their leaders, of course, that could be termed a high level of voters' apathy.
Yes.
So some people have commended the National Assembly that they even recognize that there is an issue of voters' apathy. Perhaps the prescription is not the right one.
Yes.
But they have recognized that we have an issue at hand that needs an urgent attention.
Yes.
So what will you suggest, that should be done in order to, help, in turning out voters for the next election? Because I'm sure that that is the solution they are trying to prefer. Perhaps it is.
Yes, like I said earlier, that they appear to be addressing the symptoms and not the root cause of the problems. The root cause of electoral apathy in this nation, I've identified some of them, which is lack of confidence in the electoral system. We also looked at the issue of vote buying, which cut across some of the political parties, is not confined to only one political party. And then, you see, we are all happy, glad, euphoric when we were made to understand that technology had been deployed, that henceforth the electoral system and voting will be flawless. But what we saw at the end of the day was something different. Now, what is to be done in addition to humbling INEC is to put in place an institutional framework and structure that will guarantee free, fair, and transparent election. That is the way to go, and it's very much possible. You can vote, and then you'll be monitoring. We have gadgets, technology, equipment that will do the counting. Even this manual counting is already outdated.
Antiquated.
Yes. Get machines, equipment that will do the counting and then display the results. You can be in anywhere, in any part of the world, and monitor the election going on in Nigeria. That is when Nigerians can say that yes, they are the ones that chose their leaders. But when the system is prone to manipulation, compromise, and corruption, then what the average Nigerian will tell you that, well, my votes may not count. And of course, we saw after the last election, some people in Abuja, they gathered, and they were clamoring that their votes must count. Because there were manipulations that made them to believe that they had wasted their precious votes. And they staged a protest that their votes must count. Let the National Assembly and Nigerians and the government in power, and more particularly INEC, look inwards. After billions of naira have been budgeted for elections, and at the end of the day, the results are discouraging. People will not have the impetus. They will not have even the mind to go out there to vote. But when these issues are addressed, another important issue is this: we recall in yesteryears that elections in all the political offices were usually conducted in one day, both from the presidential election to the last election down the ladder. But today they stagger the elections. Why do they do so? For political manipulations, maneuverings, and all that.
And logistical issues too.
Not necessarily logistical issue,
It's even better
because
for
it is more cost effective for you to do all the elections in one day.
Yeah.
All the materials will be there.
Yeah.
People will come out the same day to cast their votes.
Yeah.
The counting will be done at once, and everything will come. Instead of staggering the thing and multiplying the cost effect of elections. And you see, what they do is to test the waters. And when the first election is done, then they will now go and do.
They can read the wave.
Yes, and then try to do manipulations and things. the last minute to ensure that such things will not happen again. So it is better that let elections be conducted one day, let equipment, technology be deployed to ensure accuracy about the voting and the counting. And this one had technical issues. Those stories are not encouraging stories.
Yes.
Of course, somebody said to me hearing that the equipment that were deployed, they had ways of manipulating it to ensure that they get what they wanted.
Yes, yes.
Nigerians are not happy about all these things, and that's why they are not coming out.
Now,
if you do the right thing, you can see Nigerians are a very patriotic group of people. There are people that want to have the best for this nation, and they will come out to cast their votes. You don't need to compare them by legislation or any law to do that.
Yes, I want to also say, in addition to what my brother has said, that whatever election we are going to be doing must be tied to biometrics. It will help us a great deal, so that questions of multiple voting, okay, can be dealt with. If we have a technology system that allows for pure biometrics, either through the configurations, DNA configurations, and all of that.
Yeah, we have that. Of course,
Yes.
there's thumb printing in the current system that we'll have in place, whereby
I'm
you
not talking
thumb
of
print.
mere thumb printing. I'm talking about high
That's
level
biometrics.
technology. I know, where both genetic and DNA processing will be involved, will be put in, and then it can be used for purpose of election. Then we'll be able to ascertain the veracity of the figures that we are having in any polling booth. Because if we don't have that, this paper balloting, this counting of paper ballots, is not helping the country. Even this ballot card, this voting cards, is no longer helpful in Nigeria because it's subject to human manipulation, just like my good brother has said. But if there are machines that your biometrics is taken for registration, and it can ascertain who is voting, and once you vote in any place, any other counter voting will be picked up anywhere on the system, we will be able to get to where we are going.
Okay, well, if I understand what you're suggesting, because currently we don't have issue with verification because you can't vote twice because we are using biometric, and you can't duplicate biometric. Where we are having issue is the counting, because we are still doing manual counting,
yes,
even though the verification is electronic.
Yes.
The counting and voting is manual. So I guess what you're suggesting is that
should
they should make both the voting, and the counting biometric. So as you have as you are putting your finger, you are voting.
Is reflecting what you are voting for.
Yeah, but then how do you now select the candidate and the party that you are voting for? Because that will be a challenge.
The party, that's the single where you put your hand. The ballot, once you put if it's your hand, for instance, your thumb, once you put your hand for a particular candidate, the machine counts it for that candidate immediately, and it is reflected in the general figures automatically. That's what is done in the US and other countries.
Of course, I made allusion to what the NBA did during the last NBA election. Where I voted, I was inside the vehicle, just with my phone.
Yes.
I voted, and that was it. No paper was presented for me to drop at anywhere. I just voted, and that was it.
That's the manipulation. We should
and that did not give room for anybody to go and stop boxes with ballot papers and then to count and all those things. No. The world has gone beyond that level where we are operating now.
And it will also be difficult to hack.
Yes.
If it's biometric, it will be difficult to hack. But this system we are doing now, you can regulate the machine. Say for every 3 votes to one party, give one of it to us, to another party. And for every vote, it will reflect it. You can program the system that way.
Yes.
But if it's biometric, you can't.
All right. We'll go on a very short break.